Welcome to Decoded, providing in-depth insight into cybersecurity. Do small businesses face the same cyber threats as large organizations? Are your security solutions 100% effective, and how do you pick a good one? And where are the opportunities for MSPs to add value and make more money? We answer all of these questions and more with special guests Martin Lee from Cisco, Chad Skipper from VMware, and Luis Corrons from Avast. Show notes, including any links mentioned in the show, are available at decodedcyber.com. In June 2021, we set up a panel of security experts to help and advise companies selling managed security services. Managed service providers, or MSPs, need to choose a set of security solutions that they can use or possibly resell to their small business clients. Known as SMBs, the clients face the same cyber threats as larger organizations, but they're far less equipped to handle them. Joining me on stage was Martin Lee from Cisco, VMware's Chad Skipper, and Luis Corrons from Avast. So we had a good mix of perspectives covering network, virtualization, and endpoint security, and I represented the security testing world. The panel got together in London to help over 100 different MSPs identify new opportunities in the cybersecurity world. And we informally recorded the session, and now you can listen in to the top-grade advice my excellent guests imparted. Good afternoon, everyone. The attendees at this event. Thank you so much for coming to listen to us talk about security and how we can make your lives easier in lots of different ways. So, to begin with, we have a panel starting with Luis Corrons, who's come from Spain today from security company Avast. They make world-leading antivirus software, amongst other things, and VPNs you don't need, and things like that. We've got Chad Skipper, head technologist from VMware. His CV is so big I can't even begin to outline where he's worked: Dell, Cylance, Cisco. So I can apparently start listing them. And then we've got Martin, who works for the Threat Intelligence Department of Cisco itself. So if there are three gentlemen who know what cyber threats look like, these are the ones in the world that are able to talk about it publicly. And then there's myself, Simon Edwards. I'm basically a hacker, so I also know what the threats look like. And the reason that I know is because I test the products that these guys sell, the products that you guys often resell or provide support to. So I work for SE Labs, and we are like a third-party independent tester. VMware, Cisco will claim that they stop threats that the bad guys do. We learn how the bad guys behave, and then we test like hackers. And we say to them, well, yes, you succeeded, or maybe you need to fix this. And we also publish, importantly, reports for SMBs for free. So if you want to learn how these products work without spending a penny, just go to selabs.uk and you can get those reports. Anyway, so I'll give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. And then if you think we're missing something really, really burningly important, stick your hand up and we'll add it to the agenda. So first of all, SMBs don't have a lot of money. We would say that they have cybersecurity poverty. So we're going to cover a little bit of that. We're going to look at product expectations. Do you think that your antivirus or firewall will be 100% effective? Is that even possible? We'll look at value adds. How can you resell services to make selling these products or renting these products out worthwhile? And we'll talk about how do you pick a winner. When you're out looking for the right product to sell, which is the best, not only for you, but for your customer? And we would say in some respects you are your customer. And finally, we'll talk about security testing. What is security testing and who does it? How does that work? So given that short list of things that we probably won't have half the time we need to cover, is there anything else you're thinking, I wish these guys who know everything about cybersecurity could tell us? Excellent. So first of all, and let's talk about SMBs first of all. So would you guys say that because they're small and don't have as much money as large enterprises, that they are less vulnerable to attack, less interesting to attackers, Luis?
No, not at all. And you are only as small as your bigger customer is, for example. And right now, with the amount of attacks that happen every day, I mean, like most of the times, attackers don't look at precisely what is the size of this business. I just want to make money, right?
So are they not indiscriminately attacking? They're not assessing every organization?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there are targeted attacks, like that go specifically for a specific organization, right? But I mean, like they try to go for the low-hanging fruit, right? And that's where the SMBs are usually.
And why do you think, Chad, why do you think SMBs are low-hanging fruit?
It goes back to what you just said, security poverty, right? And the lack of expertise, especially when in the SMB, you've got a system administrator, a network administrator, an IT administrator. You got one guy wearing 17 hats, right? And so the challenge is how do I do those 17 hats in an effective manner? But let's take a look at the stats. From a ransomware perspective, 60% of SMBs that get ransomware are out of business within 6 months because they just don't have the monetary capabilities to pay that ransom. And so that is a significant challenge around the SMBs from that perspective.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Martin?
Yeah, I think, well, every SMB is an expert in something. You know, you're starting up an SMB because you have an expertise, because you have a passion, and that is what your business should do.
It's probably not antivirus.
It's probably almost isn't antivirus, yet there's all sorts of other things that you need to do if you're running a business. You certainly wouldn't try and do your tax accounting yourself. You'd get in an accountant. You're not going to write your contracts yourself. You're going to bring in a lawyer to do that. And I think it's exactly the same thing with cybersecurity. You wouldn't be expected, no one would expect you to be an expert in that, but it is still something that you need to do. And this really is the opportunities. We're here talking about channel world.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, this is your opportunity to be that trusted expert to the SMB and bring your expertise as supporting these small organizations in their cybersecurity, protecting them so that they keep operating and they don't become fodder for ransomware.
Yeah. This is great news. And actually the best news is the security products that these guys make and that I test, they're not 100% and they never can be. So without people like you providing the support and the added services, whatever you decide those might be, these guys are fish in a barrel, essentially, aren't they?
Yeah, they're looking at the channel to be their trusted advisor, right? And from that perspective, especially in the SMB, they're overwhelmed with their daily business. The last thing that they're really thinking about is securing their business against these advanced threats that are out there, right? They think, you know, if I have a singular product, that's going to be, you know, the silver bullet in some cases. And there's no silver bullet out there. And that's where, you know, as a channel, you have the opportunity to come in and provide your services on top of, you know, the product in which you're selling it from a security perspective.
Yeah, no, that's right. And on top of that, these small business, they basically, most of the times, they don't know what they need, right? I mean, they know there's a risk. I mean, who is there to help them? The channel is there again, right? They cannot basically, okay, what kind of infrastructure you have? Which are the weakest points you have? What kind of protection you need in the different layers you have?
So that sounds like there's education as something that could be done. Is there anything else that these guys can help them with?
I was going to say, well, the threat landscape is in constant evolution. The bad guys don't get any dumber. The bad guys are only learning from each attack. And as we're expanding our use of technology, we do all sorts of amazing things, there's still the bad guys out there who are looking at ways of subverting it. And one of our problems as we go back is actually understanding what is it that the bad guys are trying to do and how are they going about it. And this is something which is continuously changing. So we need to educate the customer to say, look, these are the problems that are happening now. This is what's affecting organizations such as you. You're my customer, my trusted customer. I don't want you to go under because, you know, I like your money. I like your payment. So this is what you need to do in order to protect yourself. And by the way, it's going to be slightly different next year just because the bad guys are learning.
And can these guys become threat intelligence experts? Or is this something that their partners in the channel can help them with?
I think, yes, you can be. You know, there's various different levels of threat intelligence. And simply knowing what the biggest threats are and being able to explain that in a way that your customers can understand basically puts you on the, a good way up on the threat intelligence ladder. And if you can just do that, you're already doing a very, very good job indeed.
Any other thoughts on how vendors can help MSPs and other resellers with their threat intel?
Well, there's, from a vendor perspective and how we enable the channel, the VAR, the MSSPs, those types of things is from the threat intelligence capabilities that we produce that enables them to then add their value-added services on top of that. Because from a product perspective, we are building a product to detect those advanced threats, but the detection is just one thing, right? So from a services standpoint in the channel, what do you do once you detect this, right? How are you going about mitigating that particular threat? How are you educating your customer on the potential changes that you need to make inside of your organization to mitigate that threat? It could be as simple as segmentation, firewall rule policies. It can be certain other capabilities that they need to deploy in order to detect those things. And so that's where the channel is looking to us as vendors to help them fill those gaps. And then what they do is provide those services on top of those.
Yeah, because as an SMB, I would be thinking, I don't want to even know about any of this stuff. Can you guys just handle this?
It's absolutely right. SMBs just take the problem away from me. Just tell me I'm safe and secure so that I can focus on the widgets that's going to bring in the revenue.
Right. Okay. Well,
I think it's all about managing complexity. You know, the threat landscape is incredibly, incredibly complex. We were talking about this earlier about the threats, and if you really want to get into the binary code of exactly what's happening, you can, but it is incredibly, incredibly complex. What organizations such as our own do is remove that complexity. You don't need to know the details. You just need to know that this was bad and we've blocked it. On top of that, there are other layers of complexity that you touched on, which is about, well, what do I do now? We've detected something, or we discovered something's got past a first level of protection. What does that mean? How do I need to respond? And I think that's a lot of the opportunity for the managed service providers is to understand that level of complexity and then abstract that to the customer. So you're just saying, look, it's okay. Don't worry about it. This happened. We solved it. We resolved it. We've taken action to resolve that because we're linking all the services together. So it's not, don't just think about cybersecurity in the absence of everything else. You've got identity management. You've got the network provision, all of that, especially coming from Cisco, everything should be tied together so that you can look after that level of complexity. So you can just say to the end user, it's sorted. It's done. This happened. We resolved it. All you need to know is that it's under control.
Well, actually, as we're going to come on to in a minute about how do you choose a product, in the old days, a security product might just block threats and maybe not even report it in much detail. But if you want to demonstrate some kind of return of investment, as we spoke about earlier, Pablo, if you've got products reporting back to you and you can monthly, not daily, but monthly go to your clients and say, these things happened, this took down this big company that got ransomware handled, but we stopped it. Here's your monthly report of how we demonstrated the value. That has to be useful, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because when anybody consumes a service, they want to understand what the value of that service is. So the ability to have those quarterly, monthly type of reviews showing we have stopped this attack chain, we detected these types of things, and telling them if that wasn't here, this is the outcome of what would happen.
Because I only want to get that phone call in the middle of the night when something's gone wrong, not when something's gone right.
That's what usually happens, right? I mean, that's the best way to show the value, because otherwise it's like, okay, the good way, usually for most people, like if an antivirus is working, is if I don't know that it is there, right?
But you still have to show that you're doing something, otherwise it's a waste of money.
Yeah, no, but the thing that there is no kind of alert or anything, maybe something bad, right?
Yeah.
And you, as the customer, doesn't know what's happening there. I mean, if you can add that value, like, okay, look, this is what has happened during this month, during this quarter, right?
Yeah.
We have stopped these many attacks at these levels. We have identified where most of the attacks you are receiving come from, etc. You can even upsell some of the things. Okay, we are getting most of the attacks from this way, so maybe we should add an extra layer.
Right, so maybe there's a web filtering service you can
Yeah.
now add to because they're always being attacked from the web.
There's always a pull-through service that you can add on based upon the telemetry that you're seeing by the products that you have and that you're managing within the customer environment. It might be, look, like you said, they were able to get initial access. And what we're seeing from that initial access is them pivoting inside of your network. We might want to start looking at all of your traffic within the network, east-west, so that when we do see something, get a breach, because there's no silver bullet, right? We at least have visibility into how they're moving laterally within the organization. Because here's another stat for you, right? It's about 197 days before a threat actor is detected inside an environment on average, right? When one has been breached, when one has found that they have been breached, right? They had been breached 197 days previously. So this is like having, a crook, a burglar that's just living in your house for 197 days, going room to room to room without you knowing.
But they've got security products. Why is this happening?
Well, it goes back to what we just said, is that the threat actors are advancing incredibly fast, that sometimes outpaces the technology. It really does. I mean, we're vendors up here, and we're fighting it every single day on trying to understand, the advancements of these threat actors, how they're evading technology, and how they're remaining resilient within organizations.
Right. So in the old days, you'd have a firewall or antivirus that would stop the threat coming in, or it wouldn't. But what we're seeing now, I think we'd all agree, and I'll double check that in a second. But threat actors, hackers, whatever you want to call them, they get into the network and often are able to move between systems, which is what we mean by lateral movement, trying to find the targets. I'm not going to necessarily want to ransomware Chad's laptop. I want to ransomware his servers, for example. So that's what we're talking about with east-west, moving around inside the organization, not just attacking
And
the
as Mark
endpoint.
was saying, they are not getting dumber, right?
No.
They just only get smarter. And you see nowadays how they do that. And most of the tools that you're using are tools that you already have in your company, in your system. So it's not that they are bringing malware specific way to, no. I mean, at some point they can, but they will use legal tools that you might even be using in your own network.
And that's what we call living off the land.
Yeah, living off the land.
Right. So things like PowerShell. PowerShell is used a lot from an IT administration perspective. It's a very powerful aspect of managing your infrastructure. But it's so powerful that if PowerShell is part of your environment, the threat actors is going to take advantage of that and use PowerShell to do very
Even easier, I'll just politely ask you for your username and password.
That's right.
And then I become one of your users, then I can do everything that your user can do. And basically, if I can get to your email server, I can then discover everything about your company, your suppliers. I can launch frauds against them because I have the invoice numbers. I can just hit your email server with ransomware and bang, it's gone.
You know what's scary? We're seeing the same thing, but in the financial institutions. They're actually staying in so that they can gain information so that they can short the market.
Right.
Actually, I've got a very good example of that. Working in this industry, you have people coming to you, so a friend of a friend or a family member has had a problem. Almost certainly the root of this issue is an estate agent has become compromised.
Never like those guys.
Yeah, and I have a nephew of a friend who's buying a house, and the solicitor emailed them and said, okay, house purchase, it's all done, all good, wire the money to this account and you'll have the keys tomorrow. And so they wired the money, got in touch with the solicitor who said, what? No, that didn't come from us.
Oh, no.
And almost certainly somewhere along the line, and my strong suspicion is the estate agent, someone's got compromised. The attacker is waiting there for hundreds of days, is picking up on the various transactions and using that to commit fraud. So this individual wired £200,000 to a criminal.
That's right. And then once it's wired, it's gone. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And so that same scenario in the global financials, And that's what they're concerned about is once that threat actor gets in, how are they staying in? How are they getting data to manipulate the market? Right.
And this kind of conveyancing fraud affects consumers, but we see exactly the same methods of attack in larger organizations too. So I've worked with a manufacturer of physical cables, and they had an email that said, pay this invoice. They were expecting the invoice. It looked exactly as it should have looked. The format was correct. They paid it, and it went off to Africa, basically. And what had happened is their email had been compromised, and the attackers knew exactly what deals were being done. They knew the invoice was expected for 150,000 euros. They issued it, and they just gave different bank details. Now, things are slightly different today because certainly in the UK, the bank, the account name has to more or less match what the bank has. But 3-4 years ago, that wasn't the case. And I suspect if you can convince someone that's a real invoice, you can convince them to wire money with money transferring type technologies, and no one cares. You just need the number. So yes, it's a bad thing, isn't it? And this is an opportunity for you guys because the products cannot handle this all on their own. An email service, security service like Microsoft or Google didn't stop that fraud from happening, but someone monitoring the emails and noticing there's a forwarding, like this is super easy consulting, right? You can go, well, monitor your email accounts on a regular basis. Did you know that every email that comes in is forwarded to this random Gmail account? No? Okay, well, we should stop that then. It's not actually rocket science. Much of hacking isn't, is it?
At the scene of every crime, there are big sticky fingerprints. But you have to look for them. You have to know what they look like. I mean, this is the bread and butter of our business. It's knowing what those fingerprints look like and being able to find them and spot them. There is always an area of doubt. In some cases, it's very, very clear that this is something malicious and you can just block it. In other cases, it's clear that something is entirely legitimate. There's always a grey area in between. And really the challenge in cybersecurity is understanding that grey area where something maybe looks a bit wrong or could be okay, could not be okay. But yeah, having that relationship with the client sometimes can be key, because if you are detecting something which is suspicious, you can reach out and double check. Say, hey, we looked at this, it looks a bit odd, or someone's downloaded something really bizarre on their laptop at 3 a.m., from Eastern Europe. Are you sure about that?
Or maybe you make the argument that as your MSP, we're the only people on the network allowed to use PowerShell, and then the whole PowerShell thing goes away, lock it down, and then the good guys can't do anything, but they shouldn't be, and the bad guys can't do anything either. So just by being present in their network, you can actually strengthen things. And there are products that you can sell them as well, which will do the same thing with policies and say, well, maybe Chad is allowed to use PowerShell because specifically we know he needs it and can use it, but Simon's a flipping idiot and shouldn't have access to it at all. And then Simon's safer.
And you made a point. It's becoming easier. Let's double down on that point. How many of you have heard of software as a service, right? Did you know there's ransomware as a service? I can actually go in 3 clicks, get ransomware at my disposal and send it out across a campaign, sit back on that platform and take 40% of the revenue. All I have to do is 3 clicks.
So, and there's no risk to you. You're not
no
going to
risk.
get arrested, are you?
No, it's all over Tor and Onion and all that other good stuff, right? But here's the thing: when a 14-year-old, and this is true, a 14-year-old in mom's basement is able to do massive malware campaigns with ransomware. And, he's not necessarily an expert, but he was given the tools that allowed him to easily make some money in the underground.
So we have a case in Oxford, one of the big ransomware gangs, Lapsus.
Lapsus.
One of the members, a 16-year-old from Oxford. His parents had, as far as we know, no idea. And he made multi-million in Bitcoin from ransomware as a service. A few years ago, we took out what was probably one of the largest ransomware gangs at the time. They were pulling in $50 million a year from ransomware alone. So think twice about it as a business. We will come and hunt you down. But there is a lot of opportunity out there for the bad guys. It's a lot of money to be made.
Trillions.
Yeah.
And it is not rocket science, as you were saying earlier. Like you look at the pipeline, colonial pipeline attack. It was just credentials compromised with no 2-factor authentication. And that was it. That's the way they got in.
Well, the same with the Clinton hack. When Hillary Clinton's party was hacked. It was a phishing email, and they even passed it around and said, "Is this for real?" And everyone said, "Oh no, that's okay." And the guy clicked it, and that was the end of that.
But this is the bit that frustrates me enormously. We can stop these threats, and in the right environment with the right support. I mean, currently we're active in Ukraine, supporting the Ukrainian authorities, and we are equal to the most sophisticated threat actors out there. If you devote your attention to it, you have the right tools, the right monitoring, we can stop it, and we do stop it. The problem typically comes, things are either overlooked, or we think, oh yeah, no, we don't really do that. Or who'd attack me? You know, why would they bother? Or the other big issue is sometimes we come across environments that have been forgotten about, that someone set up 10 years ago, and it's just been chugging over without any security oversight. And those are the types of things we get problems. Of course, the other big thing are people doing dumb stuff.
And from a channel perspective, and the way that y'all can look at this from going to market and helping your customers is keep it simple as to what we're seeing is there's two major ways for that initial access into customers, right? 33% of the time, they're going to try to interact with your user, right? Email, phishing, those types of things. I'm going to click on this, I enable a macro, and then game over. But 34% of the time, it's a silent one where they're not interacting with your user. They're actually targeting a vulnerability that has not been patched inside of your network, right? So think of MySQL, Apache, Tomcat, these types of services within the SMB that they're exposing out to the real world for their customers to come in. It has a vulnerability. Now I can exploit that vulnerability that allows me to do like a remote code execution, and now I'm in that way, right? So there's multiple vectors that you as a channel can encourage and enable your customers to say, okay, what is the most valuable vector for you right now? Let's focus on that vector, right? And move forward with solutions and technologies, because you're right, it can be stopped, right? We do have the technology to stop these things. And as we see, this past year, 2021 was one of the highest zero-day vulnerabilities that was recorded, right? And so from that perspective, you've got to have those tools in place that are able to detect that previously unknown, never seen before exploit or malware. And there are tools out there that can absolutely do that.
So I'm just thinking, Chad, like if I was an MSP and I'm looking for a security vendor to partner with, I'm just thinking myself, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking about three things probably. I'm thinking about the margin that I can make by reselling the product. I'm thinking about what services can I add to it. If it's a very non-functional product or one that doesn't report much, maybe there's not much I can do. But the other thing I was thinking is, what's the advantage to me of providing a really effective product? Why not just sell something that's rubbish?
OpEx, right?
Okay.
So what I mean by that is if you have a fairly high efficient capabilities and it's been tested and you know that it's got bringing high fidelity, you're going to bring in, you're going to lower the overall OpEx and make more margins for you, because you're really looking at that fine pane of glass that allows you to really understand what that threat actor is doing. If you have a product that's forcing so many false positives upon you, alerting upon everything that's there, that's going to overrun your operations and it's going to incur higher costs. And then your customer is going to be like, well, what's going on? Why?
Right. So if it's too cautious and it's detecting everything as a threat, I'm dealing with an unhappy customer who's dealing with false positives, so it's blocking Word or something. And if it's letting viruses through, then you're having to spend your time de-infecting or re-imaging systems.
De-infecting it, right? So that's why, I mean, all of us believe in testing our products by third parties, such as yourself, because even in our organization, our QA teams, quality assurance, naturally we test these things. And naturally we're looking at new ML and AI and those things and trying to do other aspects. But having a third party come out of this and real world hackers that take those advanced persistent threats, the tools that are used by cyber criminals, and replicating those over the network to determine how we are detecting that brings confidence to you as a channel and to the customer saying, I want to deploy this and it's got a high fidelity, high efficacy, and that's only going to help you with your overall margins, your overall operating costs.
So I don't know if you guys know much about security testing. It's a bit of a niche part of the world. You have these vendors that sell products, and then people like me come out and say, you're rubbish or you're brilliant. Luis, it costs money to engage with someone like me. Why do you guys bother risking a potentially bad award or non-award?
Well, we believe in what we are doing, right? And we want to protect our users. You help us in many ways. First, we can show the world how good we are, or test if we are as good as we say we are, right? Then you put our solutions to stress somehow. So a number of times, testers can find out problems, issues that there are in your solutions, right? And you can fix them. You don't have to wait to your customers to find those problems, right? And solve them. So it's a win-win situation. If you don't get an award or you don't get like good results, you know you have an issue there or a number of issues, so you can work on it. And it's not you always need someone from the outside to see how well you're doing comparing to your competitors.
So these guys, when they go out and they look at different security products, is every security award equal to every others, or all
No.
testers the same?
Not at all. I mean, look, there are many problems in in this world. But one thing, I mean, like if you look like last century when antivirus were starting, and then the new viruses appear, and then antivirus were just adding like pattern signatures to block that.
It's like fingerprints, basically.
Yeah, and nowadays, well, things have changed a lot. But there are a number of testers that are still doing testing if you recognize that pattern in a particular file, which is okay, but it doesn't say anything.
It's a bit out of date, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 1990s testing is no longer valid for the new millennium year that we're in, the 2020s, because don't kid yourselves. Threat actors are communicating. They have their own DevSecOps. They're using a lot of evasion techniques to specifically evade security products, right? Because the last thing they want to do is get caught, right? And from that perspective, what testing, the advancements of testing organizations such as yourselves is no longer looking at past behavior to indicate future behavior of the product. Right?
It's about threat intelligence.
It's about threat intelligence, and it's about understanding the threat actor and being able to duplicate what they're doing in order for us to effectively detect these. Right.
Guys, I've been given the 5-minute warning about 3 minutes ago. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask us? Please. A member of the audience at this point asked why there is no minimum security requirement for the companies that we all deal with, such as the estate agent involved in the conveyancing fraud. Well, I think there might be. I think GDPR and also there's another law in the UK should stop this kind of thing. So I think technically there should be. I think if your estate agent was as big as BA, there could be a situation where you could sue them for huge amounts of money. He then made the point that GDPR might require a business to have something in place, and as an MSP, he could then make that requirement actually useful and provide genuine value.
Yeah, so the Cyber Essentials program from the UK government has it's like the minimum bar that everyone really should hit. And certainly if you're doing government procurement, I think now you need to have Cyber Essentials. But well, I think this is what we need to develop. The problem, I think, for me, the problem is cybersecurity is so new. That this has only recently become a problem, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and society is constantly playing catch up. But that area of meeting the minimum requirements of something such as Cyber Essentials, I think is key. I think as purchasers, we should demand this from our suppliers, and we can then build on top of that and making things better.
And the interesting thing with Cyber Essentials, which the idea that the UK government came up with was, if you get this badge, we'll be more likely to do work with you. It never actually took off. No one goes, well, you haven't got Cyber Essentials, so I'm not going to work with you. But that's like a mini version of ISO 27001. But in neither case does it say which antivirus you should use. It says use antivirus. So Microsoft would say, for you to be able to work properly in Windows, you have to have a badge from either me or one or two of the other testing organizations. But you wouldn't say, well, I'm not working with this bank because they haven't got Simon's recommended antivirus, they've got ISO 27001, great. All ISO 27001 and Cyber Essentials says is you have to have antivirus. Not that it's got to be turned on, not that it's got to be configured in a certain way, just the baseline is so low. It's so low, it's no wonder we're in a depressing situation.
Another MSP noted that he and others are overwhelmed by the breadth and depth of cybersecurity. There needs to be protection for networks, identities, devices, communications. Are we moving to a point where one company can provide it all?
Let's get a quick answer, like yes, no, maybe from each of us before we go.
Not in the short term.
Yeah, we're still best of breed, not, it's a best of breed type of thing. There are, Avast is great at things. VMware is on the hypervisor, so we're focused in the virtual world. Cisco's, is out there in the physical world as well as some.
Yeah, so if you ask our marketing people, they say yes, Cisco is the one-shot solution for all of this. However, again, realistically, in the real world, we're going to work with this heterogeneous environment, and really a lot of our challenge is doing the plumbing. So we can get the different bits, the different solutions talking together, so you're making things easy for the security operations team to actually have that situational awareness, understand what's happening, understand where the problems are, and understanding where the weaknesses are.
And I'll finish by saying I don't think you want there to be either. If we get a homogenous situation where it's only Microsoft or only Apple or whoever providing all of the security solutions, as a bad guy, I've only got one platform to worry about. It's much harder for me if you've got this antivirus, that firewall, and all these different cloud services tied in together. Thank you ever so much, ladies and gentlemen. That's us.
Thank you.
And now, just before we finish, it's security life hack time. At the end of each episode, we give a special security tip that works for real people in the real world, for work and in personal lives. This episode's life hacker is security testing veteran, fine wine connoisseur, and chief operating officer of the Anti-Malware Testing Standards Organisation, John Hawes.
Hi, I'm John Hawes, and this is my security life hack. When I'm traveling and I'm in a place where I don't necessarily trust the security of the doors and windows, and I have valuable things with me, I try to hide them in somewhere either very boring or quite disgusting. So it could be the vegetable rack in a fridge, what looks like an old paint tin, a cool book safe is a handy thing. If you just cut out a square in the middle of a book, you can hide things in there. But don't use things like a drawer in a desk or a sock drawer. Those are the obvious places where people are bound to look.
Please subscribe, and if you enjoyed this episode, please send a link to just one of your close colleagues. We also have a free email newsletter. Sign up on our website, where you'll also find this episode's show notes and bonus episodes featuring full-length interviews with our guests. Just visit decodedcyber.com. And that's it. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again soon.